Okay. Hey, happy Thursday, everybody. Really been looking forward to this evening we have our special guest, Jordan Fiorentini from Epoch, master winemaker. Really. So I'll just tell you a quick anecdote. The first time we went there, I think was about 2005, Jordan.
Oh, wow.
And Epoch had like a double wide on the property.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember these things because I don't take notes. I just remember walking out and go, boy, that Tempranillo was really good.
Ooh.
But none of the other wines really like blew me away then. And then in 2021, Craig Chapman here and his wife took us all up there on his membership and we had a tasting. I was like, wow, things are really changed around here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so we got really impressed and been a big fan ever since. And the accolades. Jason and I follow Jeb Dunnick, and I go to his report and I go, "Look at the scores." And I just go up and down, and I go, I don't believe the scores are the only indication because it's your palate really makes a decision, but it is a barometer to like maybe I should be paying attention, but. And I hate to use this terminology, but in my personal opinion, you won't like this word, but you don't have a clunker in the lineup. So
I like that. I like that.
I'm glad you're taking it as a compliment.
I totally take that as a compliment. Wow,
Okay.
that's cool. Yeah.
So anyways,
I appreciate
welcome Jordan, and I'm going to kick it over to Jason, and let's start learning a little bit about your journey into where things stand today.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jordan, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in. I'll start with just a personal note, if I may. But my wife and I love to travel wine regions around the world, and we love wine from every region. However, Paso Robles is a favorite. Um, and you're the winemaker that originally made me a Paso Robles wine fanatic. Um, to tag into the group. I think the first club that I joined, and I don't know, this was for Paso anyway, around 2012, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But I assume everybody here knows you. I think I see you interviewed more than probably anybody in Paso, maybe Tablas Creek for other reasons, but for good reason. You get a lot of press, a lot of acclaim. To Mike's point, for those of you who don't know, Jordan consistently makes highly acclaimed wines, and I think that's part of the key. Wine ratings you can take them or leave them, but when somebody's consistently putting up good scores across the board, I think that means something. Age-worthy wines, which I think there's a story there that maybe we'll talk about later. But most importantly, delicious wines. Welcome. What we like to do is just explore a little bit about your personal journey, and then move into the business, because as we know, one of the things that makes Paso really special and unique is the ability to, in a lot of places, go connect with winemakers that you can't in a lot of regions. And that story, really, that connection makes a big difference for a lot of the consumers. Uh, so we'd like to start, just get to know a little bit about your personal journey, and maybe to start what you did before wine. If you could just start us there a little bit.
I didn't do much before wine because I graduated. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to school in New England. I went to Dartmouth College. And my parents loved wine. And so that's how I knew it existed. Because most people in Georgia, or I knew existed as a career, most people in Georgia didn't have no idea that winemaking is a career. And especially not back then. So, I mean, I don't want to age myself, but I will. I graduated college in 1999. And I had done a few wine classes, just fun extracurricular stuff, as soon as I was of age. And so I decided to take that fall. It was nice because it deferred me having to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. but I'd wanted to go the fall after I graduated to Napa to work at a winery just for fun. I actually was an engineering student, and I studied art and Italian language, and I had studied abroad in Italy. And I had, when you're young, you have these sort of like tunnel vision, but I was looking for a way to get back to Italy. I wanted to do something really creative, but I also loved the sciences. So I was going to go back to Dartmouth and get another degree in engineering because I only had a Bachelor of Arts, but I thought I'll just take the fall off. I'll go work at a harvest in Napa and then I'll come back. And I actually never came back. So I just said, you know what, a BA in engineering sciences from Dartmouth is good enough for me. I don't need the Bachelor of Science. And I talked to a bunch of winemakers back then, and it was really different. Napa was really different than it is now. I just feel like there were a good amount of wineries, but it was just, you could talk to everyone all the time. So I talked to a bunch of winemakers and asked them if they would have gone to winemaking school. And they unequivocally told me if they had been young enough when they got in the field, they would have. Most of them had not gone, but some of them had. And so I said, well, I have basically all the prereqs. I just needed a few more to go to UC Davis. So I applied and got into the Masters of, it was actually at that point, it was like a Masters of Enology and Food Science. So you couldn't study viticulture and enology or viticulture and enology together because viticulture was in the horticulture department. So I started that program in the fall of 2020. No, sorry, 2000. Yeah, the fall of 2000. Yeah, that's when I started. And but by the time it was a 2-year program, but by the time I graduated, they had merged the two fields. And so I got a master's of viticulture and enology. But the key was they had one harvest internship for somebody who spoke Italian in Italy. And that was another reason, I'm sure, back then that I knew I wanted to go to UC Davis to study
Did you
wine.
still speak Italian?
I actually met my husband when I
Husband, yes.
studied or when I worked over there at a winery. So yes, I'm actually going to Italy on Tuesday.
Whoa.
Sort of a surprise kind of last minute trip, my just family stuff with my husband's family. I'm going over there to support him.
What part of Italy?
Where I had worked in Tuscany at Antinori
Oh,
and
not the new Antinori.
Sort of. It wasn't there, but it's like
Okay.
it's really close to where the Chianti Classico facility
Right.
is. Over the next hill is their
Yeah.
main. So same exit off the highway. You just got to drive in a little bit.
Right.
And that road connects Florence to Siena. And my husband was living in Siena with his father or near his father back then. So that's where I'm going to go back. Yeah, to see his dad so many years.
Wonderful. Craig and Debbie Chapman here are heading to Italy next year. Do you have a favorite part of Italy?
Ooh. Hard to, I mean, I love Tuscany, obviously. Everyone loves Tuscany. I do really love Verona and the area around Verona. And I have never gone to the Valpolicella, but I would love to go there. And I've also, but if you go explore in that area, you can also go up to like Sud Tirol and see the wine region up there, which is so different because it looks like Austria a little bit, but it's still in Italy. So I love recommending that area because it's really dynamic.
That's a good tip because that's not where people
No, they don't
talk
normally go.
about the most. That's a good tip.
Verona is amazing, and they have a little amphitheater that's like was built by the Romans. So, you feel like you have to go to the Colosseum in Rome. Well, no, if you go in Verona, you can actually see an opera in the Colosseum. They use it. You can buy tickets and you can go. And
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Does Florence make your list, or do you count that as North Tuscany?
It's interesting because I spent a lot of time in Florence when I worked there, but I don't go back there because I just don't have a reason. We're usually going to see family. But I would say when you say Florence, like I do the Florence region, like where Chianti is, but I don't
Right.
usually go to the city of Florence.
Yeah.
But I am flying in there. So I will be there on Wednesday, I guess.
I mean, if there's ever a city that you wanted to gain 10 pounds really quickly, it's Florence is high on my list.
Yes, Florence, Siena, all the cities in Italy. I mean,
Yeah, true.
I guess maybe not if you have to walk a lot, maybe.
Right, that's the balance.
Yeah.
Uh, so then, Napa. So did you spend some time in Napa then?
Oh, I did, yeah. So I worked to harvest at Markham in 1999, which was when Merlot was in its heyday. And then I decided to go to Davis after talking to a bunch of
AKA before Sideways?
before Sideways. I predate Sideways. And and then I went to Davis, and then during Davis I worked I yeah, let's see, I worked in Napa for the 2001 harvest, and I worked at Arajo, which before it was purchased by Latour. Um, there was a woman winemaker there, and then I had worked for a woman winemaker at Markham, and they were both friends, and so they were great mentors to me. So I worked at Arajo, and the '01 harvest was really fantastic, as was '99. That was a great year too. And then in 2002 is when I went to Italy.
And then
And I
after Italy,
Yeah, I wrote a master's thesis. Actually, I just sort of chose what I was going to do based on the professor I wanted to study with. So I studied with Anne Noble, who's the famous sensory scientist from Davis, and she created the wine aroma wheel that you guys have probably all seen. She's an amazing person. And actually, when we get to some of my wine tasting notes later, I really feel like she influenced, like in this indirect sort of, maybe even more direct than it came to me later after I started doing my tasting notes a specific way. But then it's sort of meantime when I was studying wine, my dad, I grew up in Atlanta, but my dad had bought some property in the North Georgia mountains, and he loved wine, and he planted a vineyard, and he wanted to build a winery. And so my then boyfriend was in Italy, and we were looking for a way for both of us to work in the US. So he came and met me in Georgia, and we actually worked with my parents for a few years. And built a winery with them and started a brand in
in
Georgia.
Georgia?
Yeah, in Dahlonega, Georgia. And they had some really great vintages where the weather wasn't as erratic, but like the hurricanes they just had like crazy, really cold and really rainy years in the last like 10 years. It's been more difficult there for him to grow grapes. But in the early 2000s, they had some really good vintages.
So
Um,
that winery is still there.
it's still there, and his vineyard's still there. Yep. And there's a few
Nice.
other wineries in the area. It's like in the North Georgia, mountains, about an hour and a half north of Atlanta.
Wow.
Foothills Relations. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then
I've never.
sorry. Most people have
I've
never, but I do occasionally have people from there who come to the winery or vice versa. I'll get like a picture where someone like ended up
no
on
kidding.
TV.
What kind of grapes do they grow there?
They grow mostly vinifera, so the high-end sort of grape varieties that you find in Europe that we grow. My dad kind of planted everything just because he didn't know what would be best. But I would say his bet, like he planted some hybrid grapes and still has a few of them, but most of those he's done away with. So he has Sangiovese. He does Chardonnay, which a local winery takes most of it, and they actually make sparkling out of it. And he's had Cabernet and Merlot and a grape from France called Tannat. So those are some of the ones he's had more success with.
Nice.
But it's
Well,
not easy.
yeah. So before we transition into Epic, um, what is your favorite non-wine adult beverage?
Ooh, non-wine. I know I saw this question, and I actually really like kombucha. So that's not
That doesn't
alcoholic.
count. It's got to be more than
You
3%.
want you want it to be alcoholic, adult beverage. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking it could be anything.
It
Yeah,
could
because
be if that's your answer.
no, let's see. Uh, I enjoy a really delicious light European beer.
Ah,
Really do.
like a proper Pilsner or
Like a
lager.
Belgian, yeah. Be a little fruity, but just definitely really light and crisp. I definitely enjoy that.
Got it. I I mean it comes up almost every call that it takes a lot of beer to make great wine. I don't know
Yes.
if that's just a harvesting or if that's everywhere.
I
That
think
does
it's
come
also
up.
because during harvest you don't want to drink wine. So
Yeah.
drink beer. But
And something about a cold beer probably helps when you're
and you
getting
need
all
to
hot.
relax at the end of the day. And so I
Yeah,
usually just, love to have them. But yeah, the heavier beers are kind of like a different drink. Just like people ask me like white or red, and it's like they're different. They're different
right.
beverages, you know?
Totally, totally. Do you remember the first wine that made kind of a lasting impression on you?
Um, I have a funny story about wine. It's like acting more for a winemaker. My parents had bought a bunch of Jordan wine when I was
All
born,
right.
and they were going to open it. So 76, and they were going to open it for my wedding, but we decided to open it like on my 12th, I think my 13th birthday, they decided to open a bottle, and it had all gone to vinegar, all gone bad.
Oh,
So that left a really strong impression, like more of a winemaking impression on me. Like, how did that happen? And like, what is this about wine that it was supposed to go the distance, but it didn't? And I think
wait, and you were at how old at this time?
I was
13?
13, but I just remember that story.
Wow.
I do remember when it happened, but then I think they continually talked about it, over the years about how it's such a shame that this wine. Um, so that was one of my earliest memories about sort of like wine.
Made an impression, not necessarily a favorable impression,
Not
but
a favorable one, but
an
then I
unusual
had a lot of,
13-year-old to think about, well, how is it made to taste like this rather than just, ugh.
yeah, well, because my parents loved wine.
Yeah.
But then I would say otherwise, like when I was in wine school, we had, we do a bunch of tastings together. And there was the famous winemaker that owned Silver Oak, Justin Meyer, and his son was in school with us, and they came together. Justin passed away a long time ago, like kind of close to that time frame. I didn't know he was sick, but so I think he knew he was sick, and he brought like all of these wines for all the students who were in the club at Davis to taste. You had to be 21 or older. And that just watching, sort of the father-son thing, but then also, he had like been a monk at Christian Brothers before it became the CIA, and then it was really cool. That was an amazing experience to taste the wines with him.
And do you have like a favorite wine or a favorite bottle that really kind of turned you towards the winemaking business?
Um, for me, because I was really young when I got into it, I would say that the winemaking, I knew about wine, but I was barely, I was like 22 at the time when I decided to go work a harvest. Um, so it was more of like the idea that there's this product. It was like the whole procedural artistic thing that is really what drove me to go to Napa. Um, but then once I was there, it just opened, my my mind was just open to a whole different like thought process with
Yeah.
tasting and flavors, that so I kind of came about it from like such a young age. Like I wasn't quite like from, growing
Right.
up. So it was more procedural appreciation of how it's made, and then it becomes this amazing product. And
I
then
mean, that's prodigy development right there, starting at that age, huh?
yeah, it was pretty young. It wasn't like I'm not like, a child of some French chateau, but but I loved science and art, and I loved the mix of that. And then, like in this tasting group, we had like anything from the Justin Meyer to like Chateau Chem. And, I think then when my mind got open to champagne and white Burgundy, and then the differences, and I went to Tuscany and did all these different Sangiovese wines, for Antinori. And yeah, so it was just like it was just sort of like a deluge of information and flavors and all of that at that time frame.
Have you been to the new Sonoma facility there?
I have. I've gone there twice. I think it's fantastic.
Spectacular, right?
It's amazing to eat there. They do an incredible job with all the Tuscan food. But then we got to have a tasting with the woman that owns it. And actually, I love telling this story too. The woman or that runs it, the winemaker that is the head winemaker there, is the daughter of a man who was at Antinori when I worked there. And he was like Antinori's right-hand guy. And he had had a heart attack pretty young. And then so many years later, his daughter is like nepotism in a good way kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
families all stay together. And I was just, and then yeah, it was just amazing. But I don't know if you've seen the barrel room there, have
Yeah.
you?
We did a tasting in the barrel room.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did in that glass. Were you in that?
Up top over the glass
Yeah,
room.
the
Yeah.
floating little, it's beautiful. So you guys should all
Yeah.
go.
You
But
should.
the most amazing thing too, they make such great wine in every region now. They had some wineries in different regions when I was there, but now they have a winery in every region in Italy where wine is produced. And they make such great wine and typical wine of that region. So you can sit in that barrel room and taste their whole portfolio and understand the different regions of Italy.
And uh, my recollection is they're the second oldest family-owned business in the world to be behind some company in Japan or something.
I read that too. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Uh, so I know winemakers stay extremely busy, especially in a vice president capacity. Uh, but if you do find that you have some free time, what do you enjoy doing in your free time?
Um, well, you guys have all been to the Central Coast, I hope, and you know how incredibly beautiful it is here. So it's hard to choose all the extracurricular. I have two children, one's in college now though, so I have a little bit more time. But I do a lot of yoga. I love yoga. Um, and hiking and just being on the coast. Like going to the coast on Sunday is one of my favorite things to do. I just really not being from here, I really appreciate this
Yeah.
area. I think it like never gets old because I grew up in a humid, hot climate.
How old were you when you left Georgia?
Um, so I went to New Hampshire and when I was, 18, and then I went to Napa when I was like 22, but then I did move back, to Georgia at like 26, 27 for a few years. So
Okay.
I just feel like the California weather is never wasted on me.
Yeah. Amen to that.
I got a question. It's actually a comment. One thing you brought up about the vinegar wine, the Jordan. I was reading your bio, and your approach to winemaking is very much about how I can build some longevity into these wines. And I'm going to take it now that was the genesis of your thinking. So, right?
Yeah, I love that. That takes it way back.
Yeah.
Which is
So so that kind of connected there. I also think that we should talk about Vimpressions, and I don't know if everybody on here right now has any idea what we're talking about, unless they've done a tour or know a lot about what you do. But give us an idea of what you do while you're, making wine, and how your thought approach is to it.
yeah,
We
so
have a video that we can put up or a screenshot too,
Yeah,
right,
I'm
Mike?
going to try to shoot it up here. So
and I
bear
can
with.
share the video. I have the actual video that if anyone's interested, they can watch later because we did this professional video about them, which explains it really well too. But as a winemaker over the years, and because I'm in charge of our own vineyards and wines, so like we don't have to purchase grapes from anyone. I'm really texturally focused as a winemaker, and to me, that's the most important part of the wine. If you do everything you possibly can do in the vineyard and the winery, like the aromas and the flavors, like what you got in the vineyard is what you can, sort of make in the winery into this beautiful product. But what the winemaker really plays a big hand with is the texture of the wine. It's what fermentation comes in, barrel use, how long you age it, all those kind of things affect the texture. And so back in 2010, I started at Epoch in 2010, but and before that, I had been in Napa or in Sonoma County at Chalk Hill Estate, and just sort of building on this idea of really thinking about the mouthfeel and the texture of the wine. And since it's how I view the wines, I think in 2012, when our 2010 wines, my first 100% vintage in Paso at Epic were getting released, I was like, I'm kind of tired or I don't feel like I connect enough with the consumer with just writing the flavors and the aromas of the wines. I see them as shapes as they move across my palette. I'm going to try to draw them. And so I did that, and I put them on a graphical scale, like I put them on a 4-part quadrant because I wanted them kind of grounded in science so people wouldn't think they were just sort of this like avant-garde art, which is fine, but it doesn't give it as much like gravitas and meaning as I see it in my brain. And so I started drawing. I draw these impressions of almost every red wine that we release. And it really gets me to know the wine really well. And so I always do the drawings upon release. So, and when I say release, I mean to our wine club. So yeah, I have a collection of over 100 of them now. The one in the bottom right there, it was like one of the oldest ones. It was the first one. You can see it says 2010 Block B. But yeah, it's just been a fun journey. I love them in series, you know, versus individually. I just think it's really fun to look at the wines, and you know, I was like, I'm gonna keep doing it for as long as the ideas keep coming to me, and this is how I sense and see the wine.
It's
Such a
incredible.
cool and unique way to, especially put your background together, right? The art and the winemaking. And have you ever gone back to redraw a wine, the same wine, several years later?
You know, I draw them at the one moment because they do change, but I
Yeah.
have looked back, or so what I've done too is I draw a lot, wines a lot, to like doing the impressions. Like I might start in August and finish in the end of September if I'm not busy with harvest or too busy, or I'll start in July, and I'll just like draw a wine, but then a few weeks later I'll draw the same wine, and I don't remember what I drew. So I'll try to like cross-reference, and a lot of times I'll draw on something similar. You know, opening an older wine, yeah, like it's more like I've done it a few times and been like, okay, I got this. And then I look back at what I drew initially, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like I see the connection there. But a lot of times the way the wine sits on the palate beyond, because they're all my wines, right? But it has, like, I really want the vintage to come through too. And like some vintages are fatter and fuller than others, right? Others are more linear and leaner. And so like that, I can see a lot on those drawings too. I can be like, I can tell that's a 19, or is it a, you know, a 2017, which was like a warmer vintage. So like all those things come to mind.
Fascinating, just visually to be able to get a sense of, like when you taste and you could get like, you know, a proper sommelier could tell you a vintage, a region, whatever, and you could do that visually, it sounds like too, with
But
your
it's yeah,
video.
but it's this is connection. I've done a few classes, sort of. I did some at Epic last year, and at local museum. We did at the Slow Museum of Art and the studios in the park in Paso, where I just led people through the process. I've done it in Denver, so I went to a food and wine thing. So it's been a fun journey. I think the hardest part was also like this video, which we can share because I think we like put it down.
I
But
dropped it in the chat for anybody that wants to see it.
oh, cool! Because it was like
It's
a
the video that's on the website, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have, I think it, yeah, it should be on, it's like one that has me talking in it and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
It's a good video.
walking through it. Yeah.
Cool.
I didn't want to do that here, but
Yeah, no, it's like a 2-minute, 3-minute, but I had to synthesize it down. That was really hard for me. You know, it's hard, but it made me talk about everything. I'm able to talk about it a little bit more. So,
Got it. Do you have any particular or a few favorite winemakers in the region?
oh gosh, I have so many. That's a hard question. I have so
You don't have to answer either. You can just punt.
we only
well,
ask the tough questions, okay?
only the tough ones. So I can tell you the people who've been like, well, there's people that are really meaningful, and I love their wines and just their whole, just their way of thinking about things. Anthony Yant is one person who's just like really close to me. We made our wine at dinner before Epic built its own winery. So we were at dinner for 7 vintages. I was there for 4 of those. Kind of came of age as a Paso winemaker there, because I like came from a more established place making wine to this more like free-for-all winemaking atmosphere. So that was really fun, and we still just bounce ideas off each other all the time. And I love
Anthony's been a busy guy.
he's such a busy guy. He's crazy busy. Guillaume from Close to Len. I love his wines. I feel like he brings the kind of elegance that I am always looking to bring into the winemaking. I love Velia from Desperado, Villa Esch, who's making very different wines than what, but I love Sauvignon Blanc, and I just love what she's doing.
Your Italian connection in Paso almost.
Yeah, doing Interceptor and Nebbiolo. So yeah, those are
Good
ones that
picks.
I gravitate towards. Yeah.
Good
Can I
picks.
make another comment? Just doing a little research on you, it dawned on me that your team there, your assistant winemaker, the vineyard manager, has been with you
Yeah.
since, which is impressive.
Oh, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, oh my God, if either of these guys ever leave, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this either. I'm done.
Right. I mean, they've both been with you since 2011. I'm
Yeah,
going,
it's
that's
crazy.
really impressive for you to have this tight team of 5 people that have
Yeah, it's
stuck
been
with
amazing.
you. You must be an amazing manager too. So,
It starts at the top. I work for great people and they inspire greatness, and just like more of like everyone just wants to do, the guys I have just, want to do the best they can for the brand. And we've had a great intern program. And I've had other people, I mean, we have this core group, but then there's some people that come work for a few years and then they go off and do something. So that's been really fun to watch too. Just like amazing intern program. We had 2 Australians this year and an Italian, and then one guy who works in our tasting room too. So I love it when they want to cross over because they can learn so much. They know the wines so well. So yeah, but the Kyle, who's a vineyard manager, and then Zach, who's the assistant winemaker, like I feel like we can finish each other's sentences. So
um, I think the only thing we probably have left is what is the most challenging thing about making wine for you?
Oh, well, no, we've got more than that left.
I know. Well, I didn't mean that's the
he's
last.
like going to the heart, just the hardest questions, right?
Yeah, we're done. No.
No, 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 no.
The hardest thing. Um, hmm. I did look through your questions, but I didn't see this one.
Well, it's because it's worded. What's the most challenging part of making wine?
I mean,
So,
everyone's like selling it, right? The hardest part.
well, that's the most common answer, by the way.
I know,
That
but for me,
that
'cause I'm
and
like,
the
I do
weather.
feel like I'm more entrenched. Like the difference between me is I'm really focused on the wine making because I have that like super intense like scientific background all the way through.
I mean,
Um,
you're selling wine right now. You're selling your wine right now. We have many of our guests they're pretty much they're the owner, the winemaker, the
I,
marketing team. They do it all. So that's why the question kind of came out of that. May not have been so apropos for you,
well,
but
I
you
mean, if you want to
still,
know like, more of the wine making, like what is the hardest part of winemaking is,
right.
I think the hardest part for me, the hardest moment of the year is when, because different vintages are different every year, and the way the fruit rolls in is always different. And then sometimes it comes in really fast, and sometimes most of the time it comes in really fast because it's usually warm at that time of year. But it's when you start making all these decisions and doing your fermentations, and you have a moment where you're like halfway through and you're like, oh crap, did I misjudge something? Did I, I'm trying to make the best decision I can, but was I not paying attention to X, Y, and Z? So that's always like the hardest moment for me. Cause it's like all the stuff, it's like that, whatever. Hindsight's 2020, but you also don't know yet because you don't have the answers because the wines aren't done fermenting. So to me, that's like, I guess I'm probably saying that because I'm just coming off harvest and it wasn't the easiest one, but I really love the wines, but it was just like really kind of frantic, unsure when to pick. Even though I've been doing this for so long, like yields were low, weather was weird, like all that stuff. So
Well, that's understandable. We do get a lot of sales because most people don't get into wine to sell. They get into wine because they love wine and like making wine, and weather. But I appreciate your answer. That was unique, and that's understandable to me. That seems like that could be an anxious moment.
yeah,
So,
and I'm like grateful that I get to focus on that. And I don't have to be like, oh, I gotta go sell all these wines so I can pay for my grapes, like
yeah,
I'm more like in the
right.
winemaking. So I'm super grateful for that, and that we get to grow our own fruit because it's a totally different game.
Oh,
'Cause
well, and that's a good segue. I'm going to get into the fruit, but before I'm going to turn it over to Mike for a
So
little this, and
we're gonna
little
have
this and that.
we'll have a little fun here, little break, no pressure.
no pressure.
So we'll do a little this or that and have some fun. Summer or winter?
Is this for me?
Yeah.
Oh, winter.
Okay. Adventure or relaxation?
This is like an age-related question, I feel. Relaxation and coming off harvest.
Listen to music or read a book?
Read a book.
Okay. Roller coaster or Ferris wheel?
Ferris wheel. I feel like just go to the second option for me.
Swimming pool or the beach?
The beach.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
I'm a pie guy. And the last one, Miles Raymond or Jack Cole?
I don't know if I know either of those people.
Well, that's a
It's a
personal
safe,
Mike
it's a,
question.
it's a shameless plug for Sideways. We have a guest coming, Mira Honeycutt,
Oh
to
yeah.
plug her book.
Oh, is that their names in Sideways?
Right. I didn't even know their last names in there. I just happened.
Oh, yeah, because if you'd have just had Miles and what was the other one?
I said
Miles and
Miles and Jack. Yeah.
So
I
those
thought
are the
I
two
got
guys. Those are the ones, the Paul Giamatti.
right. Paul Giamatti,
Okay.
and, Thomas
Um,
Hayden Church. Yeah.
oh my God, I hate both of them. Those kids, they were so good, but they were so frustrating, both those characters. I just like,
They
yeah,
were complete opposites of each other.
so hard to have to choose. Like,
Yeah.
I think that Paul Giamatti just killed it. Like, he did such an amazing job. They
No,
both-
it's just it's an iconic movie,
It's incredible.
and Mira's coming on here in a couple weeks to
Oh, Mira's so great.
get
Yeah.
right. I know everybody knows her there. And I was just doing a shameless plug for the Zoom cast.
And
Oh,
ironically, Paul Giamatti killed a grape and admitted afterwards he doesn't even drink wine.
Right.
oh,
He destroyed Merlot for a couple decades.
but it was that ironic thing that, like, he's opening the Saint Emilion.
Yep, yep, right.
Okay. Well, anyways, we thank you for playing along, Jordan.
What does that mean? What does that mean now? That is there like an answer? It's like a survey, and then I'm this kind
No,
of.
no, no. We're going to give them to unqualified professional to create
Let me
a
know what kind of winemaker I am with those answers.
create a psychological profile on you. Anyways, Jason, we'll move on to the next segment.
Yeah, so I want to talk about a little bit about the grapes in the vineyards. It seems like forever expanding. Um, what is probably an easier question. What don't you grow now? But what varietals are all grown on the estate now?
So we have, I don't even remember how many, but we have the typical Rhone. So we've got Syrah, Mourvedre, Grenache. We have some Carignan. But it's not a Rhone, but I feel like in Paso we include it as Rhone. Petite Syrah. We have Grenache Blanc Viognier Roussanne. And we had planted what we thought was Mourvedre, but it turned out to be Graciano. So we have that. If someone's counting, I'm not. I was like 13 or something like that.
That happened to a lot of people in Paso at the same time, right?
Yes, and we took some of it out, but then we left some of it
Yeah.
where it was planted in the right. We planted Zinfandel in honor of Paderewski, who was the man that owned the property and many years before us, our main property in Paso. He was a Polish pianist and composer and ended up being a political figure in Poland. So he had planted Zin there. That he also planted Petite Syrah, so that's why he planted that. And we have Tempranillo. So that was kind of it for many, many years. And we had this old saying, it came from Justin Smith consulted on the Epic project before I joined. So Bill had hired him, Bill Armstrong, Bill and those are the owners, had hired Justin in 2000 and, oh my gosh, it must have been 2003, 2004. to find the property and, figure out what we want to plant. And Justin and Bill always had this thing, it was like, friends don't let friends plant Cabernet. And we stuck to that for so many years. But then we kind of were like, okay, we have more property to plant. And I have a background in making Bordeaux from being at Chalk Hill and in Napa. And it's like, what if we just try our hand a little bit at it, but do it, under our own, in our own way, not trying to emulate anybody, just see what happens. So we had an extension of the Paderewski property that we purchased in 2016. It's like the same property, it's just that it had different landowner. And we decided to put a little bit of Bordeaux varieties over there. And it's been exciting and difficult and, a head scratcher. And, we've had 3 or 4 vintages there now. But it's fun because I think the wine, which we're now calling the Statesman, and I feel like I can tell you why, because it's a really cool story. But it's really different than all the other wines because it's like this elegant sort of lean, tension-driven Bordeaux wine. We didn't have a name for it, and we made one in 2021, and that's the one we just released to our club like a few weeks ago. We didn't have a name, and we ran contests for all the people that work at Epoch, and no one came. It's really hard to find a name that's not taken.
Well, and it doesn't follow your traditional naming conventions too.
Right, it does not. But I wanted it to be really different. Like I thought, this wine, it's so different than everything else, but it needs to be under the Epoch umbrella. And so, I mean, up until like this summer, we didn't have a name. We were like trying to get the label design, and we were just going to call it a Bordeaux blend, and like, and I had this couple that came from New York, and the man's family had once owned the hotel called the Buckingham, which is across the street from Carnegie Hall. That it was the hotel that Paderewski lived in residence and died in.
Wow.
Early 1920 something. And his family owned it, and then eventually it got sold to like somebody, and it got sold to the Hyatt. So he's super into Paderewski. He's like such a Paderewski buff. He's been like traveling all over the world studying Paderewski. And so he really wanted to see the vineyard. And it was really cool for me to do a vineyard tour that wasn't really about wine. It was about like, oh, we know Paderewski was here because there's the hot spring, and we found all his boxes from when he had planted grapes and harvested here, and showed him all the stuff. Great guy. It was really fun. And then I told him about the wine, and he came to the tasting room the next day, and he said, I have a name for you. And I've looked it up, and nobody's used it, and you can use it. And he said, it's the Statesman. And I was like, wow, really? Like no one's used that name. But also, like, to me, Cabernet is the statesman of all grapes. And Paderewski was referred to as the statesman because he was a politician, and he's the first prime minister of Free Poland. So we use that name, and that's the new wine. So it's really fun. It's a really fun project for me and my brain to get, viticulturally with me and our Kyle, our vineyard manager, and then winemaking wise as well. It does not act like a Rhone grape at all here. So
why don't friends let friends plant cab?
Because it's really hard in Paso. It ripens later, but it doesn't like too much heat. And I think it likes more moisture, like more kind of continental climate, like Bordeaux.
Which is better out your direction anyway, then, right?
Yes, better out on York, but we have a little bit planted on York too. But it just is hard. It's hard to grow. It has a lot of acid, and we all know that Paso retains a lot of acidity in its wines. So that's pretty much why, because it's pretty difficult. I mean, Pinot would maybe be more difficult in the heat, but I guess you would just harvest it really early. It might not be great. I'm really trying to make something great,
So when should we first open a Statesman?
That's a hard question. I say it needs a few years. But I always want people to try a wine when it's younger too, to sort of understand it better. That's why I love when I come to our pickup parties and like we open the wines that are in that release, with the exception of this one, because I just don't think we had very much. We're not gonna be able to open it for everyone. However, we will eventually have enough. Like, but that's the thing. Some years there's like, now I know that like 2022 and 2024, we had such a tiny amount of Right,
And the
it's
one that just got released, I should know this, it was the 21.
21. Yeah.
And
Right.
so 23, you're doing it again or did it again?
23 is fantastic. Yeah, it's such a great
Yes.
year. So
That's an amazing
we have
book,
it
right?
all the year. Well, I don't know about 24 yet because whatever is still like
Yeah.
finishing. But, we have it all those years. There's just a very tiny amount of 22, but maybe in 23 we'll be able to pour it like at the pickup party too, so you could taste it younger.
That was
That
a special vintage, right?
vintage, and it was a late vintage, but things got
Wow.
ripe, and yeah, really beautiful, elegant. I try to fight for elegance in the wines. It's harder in the hot years. It's nice when it's easy.
Right.
I call it the 3 bottle rule, Jordan. Buy 3 bottles, one now, 1 in 5, 1 in 7 or 8 or 9.
Anthony always says, yeah, Anthony says never buy orphans. That's even better, 3 bottles.
Yeah,
One for
for
now
sure.
and several for later.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, Jordan, very popular segment of these calls is our pro tip segment, and that is if you could share a pro tip or multiple pro tips, if you would like, on how you suggested maybe consumers what they could do to improve the way they enjoy wine, whether it's how they purchase, store, drink, any of it. Any pro tips that you could share with us?
Yeah. So aside from all the obvious, like store the wine at the right temperature, and wines don't like to change temperatures. So like it's not good to get it like cold, then warm, then cold, then warm, like if you put it in the fridge, leave it in the fridge, right? Don't pull it out and then put it back in at some
Yeah.
other time. But for me, wine, especially like we're talking about epic wines, when I'm doing my release, my tasting notes, my drawings, I find that the wine changes so much as it sits in your glass and it warms. But I also just I don't pour a lot of wine in my glass because I feel like when you do that, you can't taste the wine and you can't smell it as well. So I really do like the pouring you get in the tasting rooms is so good for getting to know a wine. And then you just go back and get more from the bottle. So obviously wines by the glass at a restaurant, it's just like, that's not good for me, right? Because they've poured you, hopefully they've given you a good pour. And
Right.
hopefully you take care of the wine,
They want to drain that bottle as quickly as possible.
Yeah, they want to drain it. They also, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not a good pour, which would be horrible then if you got like a tasting room size pour for X amount of dollars. But, and they might have had the bottle open for several days, which was my other part. While I love decanting, I find it way more valuable to understanding a wine, to opening it and tasting a little bit and putting the cork right back in, and then letting it like sit with that oxygen. If obviously you're probably not ready to drink it at that moment if it's a fine wine, but give it a few hours and then even the next day versus I'm going to pour it in here and pour it back. Like you do that as a last ditch effort of, I got to open this wine too close to the time that I'm tasting it.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's a dinner. So it's like, everyone just gets this one pour at this one moment and it's done.
Right.
The exception to that is if you do have a lot of sediment and you need to get the wine off the sediment before you enjoy it, obviously it needs to be decanted, but not decanted for oxygen. Because I make these wines to age, and part of the aging is being very careful about the oxidation in the wine. So if you go and like splash it around and then leave it for a while, like you kind of just have that last impression. I'd like to watch it open up and change.
Excellent tips. And the first time, by the way, we get a lot of duplicate tips. That's the first time that anybody's talked about the proper pour, which I think is a really good one.
That's definitely
Um,
my opinion, but like I can't do anything else anymore. I cannot
yeah, I'm
have
with you.
my
Yeah.
glass. Yeah.
Um,
So, are we good? I was going to say we're getting short on time. Maybe.
yeah, I want to give Jordan a chance to just talk about um, the club or anything else about the current lineup, and then we'll open up the questions in the final time that we have. So,
Totally. We have a club. And I say that like, we have a club, because we didn't have a club for a really long time. We had an allocation list. And while I loved the idea of that, like we're never making anyone buy wine, it was really hard for everyone to understand and for us to project what we were going to sell. And then now we can actually give discounts to club members. And we took forever to have one. Everybody else did. And we still just had an allocation list. And then about like a year and a half ago, with tons of thought, because that's how we do everything at Epic, you know, we rolled out this club, and we have been so happy. I feel like the consumers have been so happy. It's just like a win-win on all the sides. So you can join our club online. You can come in and talk to us about it, whatever you want to do. But we also have some wines available for you that I kind of hand selected for this event. I think there's a link on the wine
In the group, yeah.
In the group, yes, there is.
It's the 23 Rosé, the 19 Mourvèdre, which is a wine we don't always make a varietal Mourvèdre, because Mourvèdre's the base of our veracity wine, but in 19 we did. So it's a really fun wine. And then we have the 18 Estate blend, which is our blend, our kind of big red blend that blends all the reds that we have planted on the property in sort of like a snapshot of our vineyards and winemaking in one vintage. Oh yeah, I love questions.
Well, first of all, the one thing I like is you customize big. That's big.
Oh yeah, I should say that. I'm not the best salesman, but fully customized. I'll tell you the history of everything.
I'm a salesman. I'll sell it for you, but
yeah, like you could, if you just want rosé. I understand if you just want rosé, you could just, you know, buy rosé and still be a really elite club member. You just mean you're getting rosé.
And I'll echo what Mike said at the start. There's not a clunker in the lineup. Like I really love every wine that I open, and I especially love the Tempranillo for whatever reason.
Oh,
Oh,
It's
good.
actually one of the few Zins that I still enjoy drinking.
Yeah, the Zin I love. The Temp, I always tell people I have a like-hate relationship with that grape because it's really tannic.
Yeah.
But have you noticed that we age it a year? I don't know. We've
The
aged it.
Reserva.
Well, even the regular one now, because everyone loved the Reserva, we aged
Oh.
the regular one an extra year.
So since I was there in 2005 and tasted Tempranillo, is that the same vineyard, the same vines?
Mm-hmm. We did plant on the new planting. So the thing I didn't tell you about the Cabernet is the way we did it really differently is it's actually all head trained. It's not like out on the wire. It's all, and that I did because over just this sort of 360-degree protection, like bush vine kind of thing, because I felt like that's how the vines like to grow on our property and in warmer, arid climates. We did that. We planted a little Tempranillo too. So that's doing great. So that we have one block of Tempranillo that's been augmented by another new planting, which is doing wonderful. But yeah, same block as the 05.
I feel like I saw a video about that at the head trained cab.
Yes,
Was that
for the Statesman. Yeah.
Yeah. Would that come out in the release email? I don't remember where I saw that.
Yeah, I think around the release time we had several emails and it was in one of them.
Got it.
So since we're running low on time here, let me get to some of the questions the members have, and then we'll let them make some comments once we get through those, okay?
Okay, awesome.
What is the name of the winery in Georgia? This is from Delia and Mike Williams. Yeah.
Yes, Frogtown Cellars.
Right.
Okay.
We're there Thanksgiving week in Atlanta, so we'd love to go check it out.
If you want to go up to Dahlonega, it was the site of the first major gold rush in the United States before people moved west.
Oh,
What is it called again?
Frogtown, Frogtown. They have lunch there, stuff too. It's really good.
And that's still under your parents? Your parents are running
Yeah,
that?
my parents are, yes.
Okay.
They're actually coming to see us over Thanksgiving, but they usually work. They work like 24/7, but I assume it's going to be open.
Do you have any recommended drinking chart for all the drinking window chart for all the vintages?
Yeah, I was actually working with somebody who was at Epic for a while, who was awesome with like graphics, because I had I need to do like more of a vintage chart than like a wine by wine, because it got really complicated. But yes, it's something I've been wanting to put together for a long time.
Please, that would help us so much.
You know, I need to work on that again. I had some really good ideas that we
Look at
went
what
over.
look at what Torrin's doing, and then you can make it
Yeah,
better.
I have looked at there and I love what he does. He has a lot less wines than I have, so he has
True.
I know.
I get that, but he also updates it, which is what
Yeah.
I
I
so
know.
appreciate so much.
Find
because-
that you like
Well-
you jive with it. It makes sense when you open them up.
and people are on Cellar Tracker, and particularly not Epic, but just smaller places where some random person will put something in Cellar Tracker about what the numbers are, and it's like totally off and wrong, and it goes.
I mean, it's
Oh,
like the 2013 that were the Ingenuity 2013 is perfect right
It's-
now. It's been open for an hour.
There
and
you
it's
go.
just
I love
drinking
it.
It's
on.
beautiful.
Yeah, we got 6 more bottles of this down below. We got to start drinking. So,
Yeah, it's the time, right? So it's like
yeah,
11.
this is the year in the winter. So sorry, Mike. We're just taking away the.
No,
I'm just saying the problem with Cellar Tracker, it's all opinion based.
Yeah.
So, and they're not well, I'm not saying there's nobody with real psalm skills in there, but anyway.
No, it's problematic. It's problematic.
Anyways, let's see.
I love it.
I don't mean to cut people off because we want to be respectful of Jordan's time. Larry asks if Epically is locally owned. Of course it is. Everything is estate there, correct, Jordan?
100% estate grown, the 3 properties. Yes.
Matt Valenzuela, do you have any particular goals beyond continuing making incredible wines? That's a side comment that you are aiming for, haven't been able to realize yet. Introduce a particular blend or uncommon varietal.
That's a good question.
Do you have anything?
I mean, I have overarching, let's see. I'm not looking to make another like SKU because we have so many unless like something has to happen. But I think because I have the creativity label, which I think Jason was drinking, but that's sort of my outlet for really fun, like a fermentation that I don't want to blend away or something really exciting. But on that note, because I've been doing it for so many years now and I don't always make a creativity, like what is the creativity going to be, right? Like that kind of, it's kind of all just like fallen into place in the past, but now we've like done all the varieties and done all the things. And so that's kind of what's on my mind is like, what should I do next with that?
Well, and how do you make that determination for creativity?
Just more of like keeping the creativity going every vintage, like, let me try this fun special fermentation or do this and like have
Yeah.
it, if it turns
So-
out an interesting.
It's still Syrah, you just approach it differently.
Well, that's
That-
from a different vineyard. That's not Pedersky.
No,
that's
this is
Catapult, right?
Catapult. Yeah, this
Yeah.
one.
Every
was
vintage, yeah, you have the 17, every vintage is different. It's like a
Right,
different.
okay, got it, okay.
Can I ask a question, Mike?
Yes, Craig.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jordan. I wanted to ask you, could you kind of explain, the difference between like the Paderewski vineyard and the York Mountain vineyard? And then also my second question would be, do cooler climate or warmer climate Syrahs last longer, or is it just the winemaker that determines the length that the wine is good?
Great question. So Paderewski and York are really different. They're in 2 different AVAs, even though they're touching. Paderewski's in Paso Robles, which is in the Willow Creek the district of Paso Robles. And then York Mountain is about, 8 miles west of that on the 46 West. And it's on sandstone soils. The soils are totally different. Paderewski's all in limestone. It's closer to the coast. It has way more annual rainfall, different weather patterns. People talk about the Templeton Gap when you're in Paso. When you're out in York Mountain, you're like at the beginning of where the wind starts, and then it funnels through we're in the Santa Lucia Mountains where the wind. So it leaves a really big impact on the wines. They're very different. York is typically more of a cool climate Syrah. Paderewski is more of a warm climate Syrah. Watching those 2 wines age, I mean, we've only been making the York since 2018, so I can't really speak for I don't know, profoundly about the ageability. But say breaking it down to warm and cool climate, I would break it down into maybe warmer and cooler years. But then there's also, there's like, you know, there's differences in that. So if the vintage is just a hot vintage from start to finish, it's probably not going to age as well as a vintage that was cooler. However, if you're too cold, I'm not saying your wines won't age well, but if you're too cool in the spring, you don't develop as much tannin. And so as much tannin isn't gonna, you know, you think about age worthiness being lots of tannin, but that's not necessarily the case because whites age really well. But a warm spring and then a mild year could lead to extremely age-worthy wines. So it's so vintage dependent. As long as you're in a growing region, you know, like if you're making fruit grapes or wine from Bakersfield, yeah, that's a hot climate and it's not going to age as well as or the Paso Robles wines. But then within like, there's all these nuances. And I look at, you know, I do say drink the really warm vintages before the like classic ones or the cool ones. 2013 to me was a classic vintage. So I have this is what I remembered on my vintage chart. I have these ideas of like lumping the vintages together into like cool, classic, and warm.
Oh,
And then talking about how that impacts the age worthiness of the wine. So that was, this is what I'm working on. But then I kind of forgot about it. And that I think I could still work with this. We have this graphic designer that was working with us. And I think I could just like hire her to continue to help me with
That would be
very visual.
We love that idea of the classic. That's beautiful. Perfect.
13 is the classic vintage, which those usually age beautifully.
So
Yeah, Block B is my favorite.
go ahead, Craig.
I was just gonna say Block B is my absolute favorite. You know, we bought some of your library wines years ago, and we fell in love with everything about it. So it's like my go-to for everything. How long do you think a Block B will last, actually?
That's a vintage question for sure. I still have enjoyed the 11. The 10, I feel like is probably should be drunk, you know, but 10 and 11 definitely. 12 was great. It was a hot vintage, but that wine aged really well too. So 12 and 13 are kind of probably right in that like 10 and 11 might be a little past, and then like 12 and 13 are like in it, you know, where you can still have great bottles of 10 and 11, right? But you might also have some that through the cork have oxidized a little more. But, you know, I feel like, I think is what Mike was saying, as I've sort of matured here as a winemaker, I'm hoping the wines become even more age worthy because you know, once we moved into our new winery in 14, it's like more protection from oxidation and just carefulness in the winemaking. But at the same time, if like 14 was a hotter vintage than 13, so I think the 14 will age a little bit faster than the 13. 17 was warmer than 16, should, you know.
Okay.
But
Somebody asked how many cases are you producing there a year?
depends on the year because we're all state grown and we sell some fruit to other winemakers, but we're at about like, it depends on the year, like 75 to 8,500 cases.
And Larry wants to know, are you at the winery daily? Because when he visits, he probably wants to meet you.
Yeah, I am. I'm usually here during the week. So that's the most important thing, is to come if you want to see me during the week.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Not on the weekend, not on the weekend, yes.
Yeah.
Friday.
Friday, I'm here. Which Friday? As long as not when I go to Italy, I won't be here.
Will you be there on Monday?
Or you gonna be packing for Italy on
the
Monday.
next day, and so I need to come in for a little bit to deal with my staff, but I'm not going to be in the tasting room. I'm going to be there tomorrow because it's our pickup party. I'm sorry, but I'll
We're gonna-
names down actually. 'Cause
We're gonna drop your name though on Monday
I
morning.
will, and I will drop your name too. Julia and Mike Williams, right?
Yes.
On Monday.
So in
got
the name of time, we got about 4 minutes left to respect Jordan's time.
Thank you.
If
I'm
you have
sorry.
any comments, go ahead, please open your mic and go ahead and ask Jordan, or raise your hand first, and then we can be orderly about it, I guess. Anybody have a comment?
Okay, I'll open it up.
Margaret,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
please go ahead, Margaret. Please, Margaret.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
I have some really good friends that got to meet you when you did a tasting in New Orleans. And I was wondering what your presence is there and if you could kind of just talk us through why you're there and what that was all about and if
Oh,
you
you
need to
know,
go back.
I wasn't actually there, but Epic was there.
Epic was there, yeah.
So we I wish I know that because it's ridiculous. I've never been to New Orleans being from Atlanta. I've never been still to this day. But we had a couple people in our tasting room have taken Epic on the road to a couple cities where we actually tasted like the current mailing, the club release, and then people could change their club order. I can't remember what time of year we did that one, but that was sort of like an outreach thing for club members.
Right.
The interesting thing about New Orleans is that you cannot like direct ship into a state and be distributed in that state. They're the one state that has that rule. It has
Right.
so we are not in restaurants there. We're only direct. And the reason Louisiana is actually really important to us because Liz Armstrong is from Louisiana. She's from New Orleans. So it's been a bummer that we can't be in restaurants there, but we do have a really strong mailing list, club site, list from that city in that area because of her. But yeah, I hope to go one day. I've done that tasting in Dallas. I've gone out to Dallas and done it, and we've done one in Denver too.
I'll have to tell you that the weekend I told you we spent in the guest suites, right?
Mhm.
Margaret and her husband Stuart were the
Oh, you guys were there?
joined us, and we had a great time, and we built a friendship out of it, and it was
I love that.
It was
Well,
the best weekend. We had the best
Yeah.
time.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
That
we
was,
love
really had a good time.
yeah.
That makes me so happy. It's such a beautiful part of the world.
Very
Anybody else have a question or
Patrick, dude.
I've got two comments for you really quick here. Number one, we have many hundreds of bottles in our stock on our cellar right now of yours, Jordan. So thank you very much. We are enjoying it
thank you.
tremendously. Your tasting room staff is stunning. The knowledge that they have, it works, and it's probably one of the better tasting room staffs, if not the best, that we've ever been around. And second, I'm going to recommend this to everybody here. The winemaker dinner, if you can get in, it is probably the best pairing. I still talk about eating a beet next to Jordan, that I don't like beets. And she was talking about the food and everything else as her husband was trying to talk to us about what to
Yeah,
get.
that
And
dinner.
he was going to go to Lyon and buy you something in Lyon for your birthday. We're talking about all this. The winemaker dinner and the way you paired it up with the food, with your wines, literally is probably one of the best meals I've had in my life. And I've eaten at many 3-star restaurants in our world. So this is, we still talk about it. I'm getting
my
teary
God,
thinking
that dinner.
about it. So thank you.
That was with the chef from who had been like the Disney elite, like yes.
Yeah.
He's really
He's amazing. I mean, sorry, beet. I'm like, oh, this sucks.
Who, Michael
And it
Jordan?
was actually good.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that because we have beets for our pickup party. So we have the pickup parties over 2 weekends, so it's tomorrow and Saturday, and the
Right.
next Friday and Saturday.
Which is good. Yeah.
The chef
Do you
did-
prepare the beets a special way to pair with red wine?
I talked to the chefs about it, but I really like, and I talked to them about the wines, and so I let them kind of come up with the ideas, but there's a lot of back and forth. But we are working with the chef for our pickup parties that we always work with because he knows the wines really well. And it's just the format. I don't know if any of you have ever been, but it's like you get like a bite with a certain wine and you get a bite in front of you. And he decided to do this beet tartare. So it's like he's trying to make it meaty, but it's fantastic. It's like amazing. And then
But
my sister
is he
winemaker-
adding anything to it? Is it just raw beet?
No, he did. It's like got miso paste. It's like very earthy.
Okay.
And so I realized some people don't like beets, and my assistant winemaker is one of them. And I'm like, well, I love beets. Like, and he's like, they taste like dirt to me.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
like, that's why it works with the wine.
No, but it worked. And it was like listening to you talk about it afterwards was like, I'm sorry, I've been in awe ever since. So it just works out beautifully. So I just wanted to give you
Sometimes
that.
you never know. Like you never know until you try it. And the
No.
best are where the wine and the food keep doing this to each other.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
leveling up,
It was
So-
beautiful. Thank you.
And that's the hardest trick, and that's what we're really, not that you're going to solve this issue for us, but we're really trying to figure out, like, we have all this great wine, how do we make sure that the food that we're serving pairs well with the wine?
Yeah.
It's easier for
Okay.
like, for
Don't
me
eat.
and the chefs, because I go, here's a bottle of it.
Yeah.
Open it, see what you want to do, versus you guys are like, I think the wine is this way and I want to,
Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think we just went a little over time. Jordan, I want to thank you again for your time, especially going a little bit long with us.
Oh, that's
Really
fine.
appreciate it. And everything you do, all the incredible wines that you make. And I will echo Patrick's point about the staff, the tasting room, and not to mention just one of the most beautiful tasting rooms anywhere in the world. Honestly, it's stunning.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
The architecture. I show that to my architect friends and they love it. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is so beautiful. Thank you. No, we're so lucky with the staff we have. Like, they're happy, they're engaged. We're all one big family, and I think you could really tell. So it's really awesome.
You are a very popular winemaker and a very popular winery, and your wines are very popular. And I thank you for accepting the invitation to.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We're-
Yes,
we're a
thank you guys so
simple
much.
show.
It was really fun. This
I
is
think
really fun.
Mike's, Jason, and everybody. Really, this is awesome. We're so glad we got to do this.
Oh, well, it's so cool.
you
I
so
hope
much.
you guys do. It was really fun. I try to, I haven't done a lot of Zoom things like this since COVID, but this was actually really delightful. Loved hearing from
Hey.
all of you.
We're excited. It's going to be our first visit. So we're
Oh,
really-
I'm so excited for you guys too. You're gonna love it.
Hey,
It's so great.
Jordan.
You're coming.
I will try to catch up with you on December the 6th. And I grew up
Oh,
in Georgia too.
You know what? I am going to be at a wine dinner by Yosemite that night.
Oh,
So,
nice.
Are you gonna be coming in early or are you coming in late?
It'll probably be early.
If you're there at like 10 a.m., I might be still in town because it's only a few hours away. Has anyone ever been up to Oakhurst, California?
Yes.
So they have this incredible restaurant. It's in Chateau. Anyway, it's like a Michelin. Anyway, I'm doing a dinner there.
Nice. Very
And,
nice.
but it's that night because I figured like, oh, that's it's a
What
good
a
time.
horrible locale.
Oh, so hard.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
hard. I don't know how. you
But
put
I'll
up
try
with
to. Is Larry right? Is that who's coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will. If you're there around 10 a.m., I will try to. If I'm still here, I will come say hello.
Well, don't worry. Go have fun.
it.
Oh, where
Well-
are you? Are you from Florida too?
Yeah, I grew up in Georgia though,
I knew your accent. I'm like, you're from
South Georgia.
around
Well,
Dawson.
hey, thanks again for everybody that joined. And Jordan, have a great
Thank
trip.
you, Jordan.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you so
much.
much.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, really do. So
No, thank you guys.
it was wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a
Okay.
great evening.
Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Okay. Let me hold on. Hold your horses.
So I shouldn't tell the off-color jokes right now, huh?
Hold
No,
on.
I was laughing. He was whispering